Ready for a midlife reboot? Rachael Lee, author of the blog Midlifing It, made the decision not to live someone else's version of her life. She shares the small changes that any of us can make, as well as her own huge change of relocating from Oregon to La Paz, Mexico. And in this episode, she discusses the power of starting with small changes, how she took charge of her own health and wellness, the whole decision around deciding to move to another country, what we can learn from the blue zones and really apply to our own lives, creating a high quality life, not just a long life, and refusing to settle for the status quo. Now, I really enjoyed this discussion because Rachael is very real, very down to earth, and simply decided to live the life she wanted to live. And there's so much inspiration and so many great lessons we can learn from the example she's setting. Also, be sure to check out her blog at midlifingit.com. And if you haven't heard the last episode yet, we had Sam Rice on. Speaking of someone from another country, she was calling in from Fiji. And she is a midlife nutritionist and author of The Midlife Method, How to Lose Weight and Feel Great After 40. Now, that isn't a diet book. She's really focused on sustainable long-term health and wellness. And so she discussed how our bodies are changing in midlife, what we can do about it, how do we keep food from being the enemy, the importance of improving our gut health, as well as the importance of strength training. And she talked a little bit about her own journey and how she became a published author and some thoughts for those wanting to change direction mid-career, midlife. Listen to the previous episode. Great episode with Sam Rice. Listen to this episode. I think you're really going to enjoy it with Rachael Lee. It is time to play bigger. So let's get started. So today's guest is Rachael Lee of Midlifing It. And I'm going to Rachael, I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself a little bit. Well, I was just about to launch into why I'm excited to have you on, and that would have just spoiled your whole introduction. So go ahead and introduce yourself, and then we'll talk about that.
Yeah, thank you. My name is Rachael Lee. I'm from a small town, Dallas, Oregon, and I have been a nurse for 19 years, and I've now decided to completely change directions, really reevaluate my life, and we've decided to move to La Paz, Mexico, and do a complete life reboot. And so now I'm writing, and I've started a blog website called Midlifing It. So that's a very quick synopsis.
Nice. Well, a lot of people have started, fewer people have continued them, but the whole rebooting the life, moving to a different country, that's kind of a step beyond what many of us do.
Sure.
So so the topics I would love to cover today for everyone here is, of course, you do the blog called Midlifing It.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that, I'd like to find out, kind of what inspired that and kind of what you went through in your own midlife. Because one of the things you're doing that so few people do that I think is just really cool is you've stepped back to really rethink midlife.
Mm-hmm.
So often we think so hard about what we want to be when we grow up, when we're a kid or when we're in high school. And, if we go to college and all that, and we forget that life keeps evolving and, we just kind of keep going in a groove down that trend line. And yet at any moment we have this great opportunity just to stop and rethink, like, is this where I want to be going?
Right.
And you've done that. So I want to get to the whole La Paz, Mexico thing, because I think that's so cool. But before we do that, so what led up to creating the blog Midlifing It?
Yeah, so it's really, my story goes way, way back to when I was a teenager. I come from a family, my mother's a nurse, my sister's a nurse. And so it was kind of assumed that I would go into healthcare as well. But somewhere along the way, I had somebody ask me, I think I was about 16, 17, why do you want to be a nurse? And I couldn't honestly answer him. I said, I don't know. And so he said, is there something else that you would want to do? And I thought about it and I said, yes, actually, I would love to go to film school. I'd kind of grown up as a kid with an 8mm camera, in my hand, making home movies, writing scripts, making my poor girlfriends do home movies with me at sleepovers. And I really was fascinated and wanted to go to film school. So I applied for and got accepted to NYU, Tisch School of the Arts Directing School for film, and was pretty stoked about it, but my parents were not. And so, if you don't really have support, I think my parents were proud of me, but the idea of their daughter going to New York for film school did not seem very rational to them. And so they weren't into really helping me figure out how to do that. And so by default, I went back to nursing. So I went to nursing school and have been a nurse for, again, 19 years. But, it's really been probably at least the last 10 years where I've really not been happy. I've been feeling like something was missing in my life. I didn't have a creative outlet. And so I've been searching for a while. And fast forward, and the pandemic hits. And like a lot of people, everything shut down, and we had a lot more free time on our hands. I was still going to work every day at the hospital because I was working in a hospital, but the evenings and the weekends were free now. You didn't have kid activities to run around to. And so my husband and I just started kind of going, wow, where are we in our life? And then I coincidentally started having some stomach issues, some gastrointestinal problems. And I was pretty sure I had irritable bowel syndrome, and that might be TMI. But as a nurse, and I have a family history of that, so I was waiting to get into a specialist to confirm the diagnosis. So I started doing a lot of research on my own about how to alleviate my symptoms, how to live a healthier life. And really, so all of this kind of led my husband and I and myself to go again, where are we at in life? Is our life serving us? You're at that kind of midlife point that I think so many people hit, and you reflect on where you've been, and then you start looking at, where do I want to go? And that's where we just really decided we need a change. We need a reboot. He was burned out on his career. I was burned out on my career. And so we started formulating this plan. We had bought the house in Mexico as a vacation home. That was initially how it started. And then the wheels kept spinning. And I got to scheming and planning. And I said, hey, what if we could move? What if we could do this and change careers? And didn't take a lot of convincing from my husband. He's like, yes, yes, please. So I created this blog. It was kind of actually my husband's suggestion. He said, you seem really passionate about what you've learned about health and happiness and longevity. And I said, yeah, I really am. And so I started writing my blog, and I went, oh my gosh, this is what I've been missing. This is that creative outlet that, it really hit me like a ton of bricks. Like when I'd be writing my blog posts, I'm just like, this fills my soul. This makes me happy. And I think, the nursing part of me will never go away. That's what I was for half of my life almost now. So big part of nursing is teaching. And I really do enjoy that part, in teaching and sharing things with people. So sorry, that was kind of long-winded, but that's kind of how we got here.
No, that's fantastic. And, I suspect a lot of people can see themselves in that journey.
Yeah.
Either didn't know what they wanted to do when they were a teenager, or didn't have a way to get there, or,
Hmm.
didn't have support to get there, go into something else, or went into something enthusiastically, but then discover in midlife that, who they were at 18 is not who they are much later
For
on.
sure. Uh-huh.
I love those questions that both of you were asking, just around, is is our life serving us? Is this where we want to be, what we want to be doing? And those are powerful things to talk about. So now, midlifing it, you describe it as a blog, but I know you have
Hmm.
a whole merchandise section on it. So, it's a little bigger
Yeah.
than most blogs are.
Sure. So my husband's new career is graphic design. He was
Nice.
a high school art teacher. And so he's figured out, hey, I really like graphic design. And so we've kind of combined his new career with my, website. And I just felt like I wanted, and I hope to add more shirts and designs. I wanted to be able to create maybe some shirts that would help people feel empowered, midlifing it my way, midlifing it with strength, some just kind of things to, visually remind somebody, or maybe they're having a bad day and they look at their coffee mug and it says midlifing it my way. So, I just felt like anything that we can do little every day to remind us, whether that's to wear an empowering t-shirt or drink your coffee out of a happy mug. I wanted to be able to share that with people too.
Nice. Well, and I mean, no surprise to any of the listeners out there. I love the idea of just owning midlife, like, wearing it on a shirt, having it on your coffee mug. We spend so much time trying to hide what stage of life we're in, that to just fully own it, I mean, you can't enjoy it if you're not just fully owning that space. And so anyway, that it's fun to see. And I love the combination, of your husband contributing to it as well, and bringing that piece to it. So for this whole reboot, and it's seriously a reboot, because you're not just moving to a different state, you're not just changing jobs, like you're moving out of country. Both of you are changing jobs, so you don't have the stability of just one person doing it, and still being in your same town, same house, all of that. And that's a big enough change. So I mean, you've committed to it, and you'd mentioned you already had a house there, but why La Paz?
It's just a place we've been to, and it really spoke to us. We've traveled to different parts of Mexico. I actually traveled as a kid with my parents on medical missions. So I've traveled a bit, and so I think people who have traveled have probably hit or gone to a place, hopefully, where they've been like, wow, this place is great. And that was La Paz for us. It just fit our vibe. And again, I grew up traveling to Mexico, and then we vacationed there many times. So it's pretty normal for me. And, the other part is we couldn't afford to do this here in the United States. And the cost of living here is high. And so for two people to start over and have new businesses where there's not any cash yet, coming in, we're debt free now. We were able to sell our house, and we managed our money wisely. So we're debt free making this move. And so it just made sense for us. And I mean, heck, if you can live in paradise while you're doing it, why not?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So congrats on being debt free. I mean,
thank you.
That is, you don't hear about it much. You hear people working on it, but yeah, it's just, our society doesn't push us in that direction. It pushes us in the opposite direction to live at the edge of our credit limit. And yet for my wife and I, we found it, we recently became debt free and just found it so freeing. For us, it was more about whatever life throws at us. We have cushions and reserves. We know, we can deal with it, and there's flexibility. Economic downturns, whatever, we can move. We're not trapped in a house, not trapped in a particular anything. So, but of course, you've taken that a step further, and are moving, are using that to your advantage. But I think what you're doing is also, for me, and one of the reasons I want to have this conversation is just kind of a little bit of that dream of being able to retire, go live in paradise. Mm-hmm. And I know there are some folks here in the U.S. that expatriate to other countries to live and to live more cheaply, but not really downshift their standard of living at all, because as I understand, even like in La Paz, great medical centers, great community,
right?
For the very little bit that I know about it. So how's your Spanish? Like you said, you've been to Mexico a lot.
It's not great yet. Had a couple of years of Spanish in high school, and then through visiting and through nursing, of course, I've had many Spanish speaking only patients. So I've maintained a certain level. So I'm really hoping to build on it quickly now. Right. But the rest of my family does not speak Spanish, so that'll be fun.
So is it fairly English friendly in that community?
Yeah, I mean, so La Paz has 250,000 people. It's not a huge tourist destination yet necessarily, because Cabo is only 2.5 hours away. So probably most tourists go to Cabo. But, in the area along the boardwalk that they call the Malecon, there is pretty much most of the people in the shops or the restaurants would speak some English. So, and then our realtor is a great help to us. We're getting some help from a concierge company that helps expats set up everything. So there's help out there, and for people, so we don't have to reinvent the wheel and totally do it on our own.
Okay. No, and that's great to know because I've kind of had this thought in the back of my mind for a little bit. It would be really cool to go do that. My mom's kind of talked about doing it. I don't think she'll end up doing it, but it does feel like I don't even know where to start. Like buying a house in the United States is tough enough to think about, buying something in another country,
Uh-huh.
not speaking the language, at least, I don't. I guess if I moved somewhere where they spoke a little bit of German, I could probably handle it. Not real useful when you're talking about moving to cheaper countries.
Yeah,
Um,
sure.
anyway, so tell me about that adjustment, because even with the services, like you mentioned,
Hmm.
your kids, your family, that's a whole new culture. Like how did you sell them on that? How on board are your
Yeah, so the
kids?
two kids so we have three kids. One's just graduated, our oldest, and he'll be starting college. So we are leaving him behind here in Oregon. But our 16-year-old and 11-year-old, the 11-year-old's just totally in and excited because he loves the water. So we'll be right there on La Paz Bay that goes into the Sea of Cortez, and he's excited. And then the 16-year-old, she has a little bit more reservations, but we made a kind of a, not exactly a deal. We said to her, we won't do this move until you graduate, if that's important to you. We were willing to wait a couple of years, and she gave it some thought, and we went to visit our house spring break, so this March, and they pretty much decided by then, the kids, that they were in, and after that visit they really were like, yep, let's do this. So my 16-year-old's kind of even looking at it as a life reboot for her, which I think is really cool. So she's going to obviously miss her friends, and she's a little nervous about not speaking the language, but it's a journey, and we're helping them with it and trying to just look at the positive of, yes, we're leaving things behind, but what we're going to be gaining and the experience and the life experience is going to be so much more. So we try to frame it that way, you know. So
Yeah.
we try to keep it really positive.
So, what life experience are you hoping to gain? So, I mean, yeah, obviously midlife, rethinking, rebooting. Um,
Yeah.
Even if you came back to the States or moved somewhere else in a few years, what are you really hoping to take away from La Paz?
Well, I really want to give that shot to having control of my life. It feels like for the first time I'm taking the steps of not living someone else's version of my life or my dream. And it's just really empowering. And I I do believe in myself that, if I make up my mind and I decide to do something, I'm going to make it happen and make it work. So I do have, that confidence. And so just really being able at the end of the day, or when I'm 80, 90 years old, saying, I took control of my life and I did it my way. And that's what I really hope to share with other people is, if there's something that you feel like you're missing, or that, something, an intuition or something inside of you, listen to it, because you know yourself better than anybody. And that's kind of how I finally got to this journey, is I want to, again, take control of my life and help other people see that you don't have to settle. And midlife, if not now, when? So go for it.
Nice. If not now, when? A very, very powerful phrase. And I love what you say, no longer living someone else's version of your life.
Mm-hmm.
So, from your experience in your own life and in helping others with their lives, how do we go about rebooting? How do we go about connecting with what we want in our life? Because I can imagine that, if you've been living a life for 40, 50, 60 years, that
Mm-hmm.
it can be, I can imagine it being hard to even know what you want for your life at this point. You've just so
Right.
lived that other life. So
Uh-huh.
where do you even start?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, obviously where we're starting is pretty extreme, right? And I don't, expect that everybody's gonna pack up, give away all their possessions and move to another country. But I think you got, starting small, just starting something. If you're feeling, whether it be, I don't like my career, or I'm not in a healthy relationship, or I'm not happy with my health in general, whatever it is, just start small. One little thing you can do each day is just start, believe in yourself. And I think for us, it kind of took a rock bottom type of experience, kind of the perfect storm of events to really make us finally take that leap. And I don't think everybody necessarily has to hit a rock bottom, but really listen to your intuition and yourself, and start making small steps and believe in yourself. Because I think that we all know what we should probably do, but we don't for some reason trust ourselves or believe ourselves. So just take a small step, and maybe the next day another step, and it'll kind of build upon itself.
Well, and it sounds like that, you did that. You are at a more extreme point than most people might get to. But just as you're talking about, your own history, you started with just like researching health a little bit. How do you
Mhm.
improve that? And then, next step. And I'm guessing gaining confidence, becoming a little more empowered along the way, taking control of that piece of your life. So, so good news for everyone listening. You don't need to just pack up your entire life and move somewhere. You can start small, and it'll build to where it
Right.
goes to. So and I know everyone's different, but for you, when you were kind of taking charge of your health and wellness, what are some of the things that made the biggest difference?
So again, I was looking for ways to improve my irritable bowel syndrome. So I did a lot of research on diet to alleviate my symptoms, which then led me to learning about plant-based diets. So we changed to that, which it's kind of this cascading events. Then I found out about the blue zones for longevity. So blue zones are areas around the world where researchers found have the highest concentration of centenarians, or people over 100. So there's 5 of these blue zones around the world. So I did a lot of research and learning about those and the 9 characteristics that they share, because at midlife you're going, okay, I'm halfway there. How am I going to help myself live the healthiest and longest that I can for the next, the second part? And so that's a lot of my health journey, is learning about steps I can take to not just live a long life, but live a healthy and vibrant life, where you're active and really getting the most out of your life. Medical science now can keep you alive, but are you living a good quality of life? So that's a lot of where the health journey part and of my blog too is centered.
Not to put you on the spot, remembering all that you learned about the blue zones, but I don't know much about them. So I'm really curious. Like, I don't think I live in a blue zone. So what are some of the things that you learned that would be easy for folks to do, short of
Right.
moving their life to another area of the world?
Right. So just quickly, the blue zones are the 5 areas are in Greece, Icaria, Greece, Sardinia, Italy, the Seventh-day Adventist community in Loma Linda, California, Okinawa, Japan, and the Nicoya province in Costa Rica. And these people share these 9 common denominators. One I really love is move naturally. So these people don't necessarily go to a gym every day. They just incorporate movement into their daily life. They just don't sit a lot,
Mm.
which, a lot of our modern lifestyle is not geared toward that. We sit, right? We're at the computer or desks, or, we have a Roomba now to do the vacuuming for us. If you think about all these modern conveniences, they're going the opposite of encouraging you to just move naturally through your day. A lot of these communities, they garden a lot. So there's that. There's having a life purpose, having something that wakes you up every morning and gets you going and makes you healthy, happier. So having purpose in your life. Downshifting, so having less stress daily. So however you can figure to do that. Belonging to a community of like-minded people that support you, support your healthy journey. So a lot of community and even being around family, which we're kind of breaking that one because we're moving away from our family, but a lot of blue zones incorporate family and multi-generational households, things like that. So that's some of them. Again, another one that we decided to adopt is the plant slant. So most of the people in the blue zones eat a 95% to 100% of plant-based diet. So my husband and I decided to adopt that one too.
It feels like our society is set up to be like the opposite of the blue zone here.
You nailed it on the head, Brock. Yeah. Yep.
I mean, you mentioned move naturally. So you're right. So I have a Roomba, I have a riding mower. I get up, I get in my car, I go to the office, I sit in the office, I drive home, and then I sit down. So
Right.
if I'm not conscious about it, I don't, it's easy for me to not move unless I'm very conscious about it. Less stress. Well, so much of our lives seem to be geared around stress that there seems to be less sense of community these days. I mean, people move around more, don't necessarily live near family as much. Most of my friends are, I'm more connected online than in person.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that's totally uncommon. And so anyway, those are all great, and they're simple. I mean, they're not easy, but they're simple.
Right. I mean, these aren't fancy areas of the world. I mean, these cities or regions that they've studied, they're a pretty simple lifestyle and simple people, and they're not doing any of this on purpose. It's just how their lives are. And so, yeah, it's like you said, it's unfortunate that our current lifestyles are really kind of doing everything. It's like we're doing everything to kind of send us to an early grave, but then we're medically keeping us alive, but it's not a real necessarily healthy or vibrant life. So any little thing you can do to start getting your health back is a step in the right direction. I do think moving naturally, not moving countries, but getting up and walking and doing your chores maybe by hand is maybe one of the easiest ways we can start.
Yeah. Well, and I know our bodies are designed to move, and I believe our lymph system works only through our movement. I'm not a doctor, so I'm just going with what I read there. But so yeah, so much goodness that comes from that, and I love it's not this huge complicated thing like get up and move. Know what you want to accomplish anyway. So you're moving to Mexico, your kids are on board. Obviously your husband's on board. So for you, what's kind of the next steps? I mean, obviously you'll be driving, you'll be unloading all the stuff and all of that. But, once you're settled in, kind of what do you envision your life looking like?
Well, yeah, we've talked about this a lot. We hope we have to obviously get into a routine. We're not retiring, so we will have these online businesses that we have to, start going and getting some income from. But we hope to get up and get some exercise in, go for a walk, and pretty normal. We got to take our youngest to school. He's going to an international school, and then we'll come back and work on our businesses, but just a slower pace, more at our life pace, and then being more present as a family and really taking more time to be mindful of our life and what we're doing and living more with a purpose than just winging it. I think our lives are so busy. We just do get into default mode and just, run this hamster wheel. So we're hoping to get off of that and live more with a sense of purpose and meaning. And then, we're going to be working on building a community down there. We need to meet some friends. So that's going to be important. And I'm very mindful of that I need to find some friends and a community down there. So that's going to be kind of high on my priority list.
You mentioned building 2 online businesses.
Mm-hmm.
So I know you're just getting started with it. I don't know. I'm just kind of wondering, how do you go about building an online business from It sounds weird to say from another country because the internet's everywhere. So it doesn't really matter
Right.
where you are. So maybe that doesn't make any difference at all. Maybe that's just kind of my own hang up there.
It's been challenging. I mean, I didn't go to school for business. I went to nursing school. So I told my husband, I wouldn't try to be a nurse without going to nursing school. So I'm doing a lot of research, and a new friend suggested some great books to read. So I do kind of geek out on doing research, and so thankfully. So I'm learning. It's going to be a process. I don't have an MBA. I didn't go to journalism school. So I'm going to ask my readers to allow me some grace as I start this process. So it's challenging, but I just doing the best I can one day at a time with reading. And, the really fun thing about this time we're living in is the internet. You can find anything right on the internet. So, when I was a senior in high school and couldn't figure out how to get to NYU, there was no Google. I couldn't Google it or YouTube it to tell me how to do it. So actually the internet's a pretty great thing.
Absolutely. Well, but before we wrap up here, Rachel, so what advice would you have for others who are kind of thinking, hey, this kind of living in paradise at a lower cost of living sounds like a decent thing? Like,
Sure.
what advice? Where do they even get started?
The best thing I can tell people is, again, listen to that inner voice. And if you feel like something is amiss or out of balance, you're trying to tell yourself something, and listen to it and trust your instinct and just believe in yourself. And you probably do need to do some big steps like making an action plan, but just take that first step of don't settle for the status quo if it's not fueling you or feeding your soul. You don't have to settle for it, and just take charge and reclaim your life.
Well, that seems like a nice mic drop moment right there. That it's good advice. So
Thank you.
where can people find you?
Sure. So my website is midlifingit.com. It's a made up word. I think I made that word up. MIDLIFINGIT, midlifing it. And then I am on Instagram at midlifing it. So far those are kind of my baby steps.
All right. Well, and you've got the blog, but also out there is a newsletter. You can subscribe for that. And I think you have some other resources out there. What else can people find on your website?
Well, again, there's the fun, empowering shirts and mugs and things you can buy. I have a life reboot checklist. So if you do subscribe to my newsletter, it'll give you a copy of that life reboot guidelines or things that you can start that way. And so there's a couple of blog posts about how am I ready for a life reboot? And then how do I start a life reboot? And then more information, again, kind of geared towards Blue Zones philosophies. So geared towards some health and then just some empowerment and taking back control of your life.
All right. Very nice. Well, Rachel, it's been fantastic having you on as a guest here. And I'm so excited for you. That sounds like such a cool journey.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
All right. So that wraps it up for today. I would love to know for you, what is the biggest takeaway from Rachel? What information, ideas, inspiration are you going to apply to your own life? Please let me know. Hit me up in the comments. Let me know on Instagram. And speaking of, two things I always want to ask is, one, since you enjoyed this episode, please share it with others who might also learn, might also benefit from Rachel's journey, her message, and always appreciate when you leave reviews. You can easily leave a review on lovethepodcast.com/midlife mastery. Of course, you could go to Apple Podcasts or wherever. Love the Podcast is just an easy way to do it. And your reviews help me understand what you really enjoy about the podcast, the guests that you really like, what you want to hear more of. And it also helps other people discover the podcast as well. So thank you for listening. Really appreciate your support and love to hear your feedback and how you are applying this in your own life.